Hasluck.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. A year ago, a little after sunrise on the 25th of October 2022, the member for Fairfax was happy to stand in this place and try to take credit for the rollout of solar and wind power in Australia, almost all of which to that date was supported by state government policies, then suggests that the Albanese government's targets were too ambitious. Then, of course, he also voted against the climate change bill, and in December voted against the price cap and so voted against lower energy bills for all Australians, just as other members of the opposition did. It is beyond bewildering that anyone has bothered to show up and debate this motion, and it can't be not said that the member for Fairfax himself is not here to debate his own motion, and the member for Hughes, they're standing on shaky ground trying to take his place. I hope my speaking on this odd coalition motion doesn't lend any semblance of credibility, but I feel obliged as a member of the government committed to tackling carbon emission and the massive task of transitioning away from reliance on fossil fuels and towards cheap and reliable renewable sources of energy. After a decade on the Treasury benches, the Coalition have amassed a string of best hits in relation to energy policy. In the wake of Prime Minister Tony Abbott tearing up the most effective carbon abatement policy this country had had to date, we had direct action, followed by "This is coal," when under Turnbull's Prime Ministership, the soon-to-be next Prime Minister and now member for Cook implored us not to be scared of a lump of coal. That's the Coalition, always wishing it was the mid-20th century. We then saw a rejection of the clean energy target, the introduction of the National Energy Guarantee, followed by the scrapping of the renewable energy targets. Then those opposite went all Soviet on us and threatened to use taxpayer dollars to build a coal-fired power plant. We were assured we would make our Paris targets in a canter. Then we saw huge investments in hydro and batteries, but that clearly made a few of those uncomfortable, so we then got the gas-led recovery. Over the last decade, the Coalition have presided over 4 gigawatts of dispatchable energy leaving the national energy market and only 1 gigawatt coming back in. Now they pretend to form policy while really only flirting with the nuclear industry. Like most areas of policy and government, this means Australia has a lot of catching up to do, but that catching up has begun under the Albanese Labor government and will continue. In the less than 18 months of Albanese government, we have already provided business and investors with the certainty that they crave by legislating emission reduction targets and setting new renewable energy targets. We've capped gas prices to keep electricity prices from spiralling out of control after the Coalition kept Australians in the dark in relation to how bad the energy crisis was in the dying days of their government. We've put in place the proper incentives for industry to reduce their emissions output through the legislated safeguards mechanism. We've reinvigorated ARENA and the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. We're investing in hydrogen, solar, on- and offshore wind, transmission and the training to ensure skilled workers are there to keep the lights on for all of us. Australia, under Prime Minister Albanese, Minister Bowen, Minister Plibersek, is once more taking us all seriously on the international stage. The Gen Cost report by the CSIRO and EMO does include the cost of transmission and storage for renewables. It is not uncommon for the Coalition to undervalue the CSIRO. Some members opposite may well find it confronting to learn that governments and legislators are always obliged to accept and act on the best scientific advice available. In relation to the nuclear energy, the member for Fairfax appeared to favour the Gen Cost. The report indicates that the nuclear path would be about 5 times more expensive than renewables. The SMRs also promise to be dirtier, creating more nuclear waste. Feasibility is a live issue, and the time frame within which such reactors might only be able to be constructed means that they would only start to provide energy next decade, by which time the march of renewables will be so progressed as to make the Coalition's nuclear thought bubble even more farcical than it is now. The sun will rise in the morning, not a metaphor. The sun will rise each and every day in this country, and each and every day will shine on more solar panels and push wind through more turbines than it did the day before. The member for Fairfax and the opposition need to catch up. The world is turning without them.